Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. The first hour is generally some discussion about media, virtual production, whatever questions come up, we'll discuss them. And the second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we don't stream the second hour, but we do talk about education, since it's a great conversation about education with a lot of great educators. So we'll be doing that in an hour. Well, actually, this will end about 7:50, so we have a little time to bring everybody in. So we'll work on managing our questions until then. Yeah, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Emily Russo from Nashville, Tennessee.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm pretty excited about today's questions so far, which look really good. Let's go ahead and get started with our first question.
Our first question is from Hasmukh Gajar in Cape Town. I switched my WLM meters from mimoLive screen scrape to OBS. Someone mentioned OBS being unstable on a Mac and crashes often. Anyone have the same view or experience? Are most OBS users on Windows?
John Preto.
Often is not the term. I've been running OBS since the beginning of office hours, and it's pretty stable. It doesn't run as well that it does on a PC. It's more efficient on the PC. It runs okay on a Mac, and it doesn't crash that often. I haven't had a crash that often. A couple of times, but not that often.
Jeffrey?
If you want to try something else, try CamTwist. It's absolutely free, and I believe they also have the M1 version out there, and that's all open source as well.
I was going to say I've never had an issue with OBS, but I only used it a couple of times with presentations and stuff. So on a Mac, but I never had any issues. Interesting. All right, next question.
Next question is from Hasmukh Gajar as well in Cape Town. Weird Zoom behavior earlier today in after hours. Rotem was handing co-host to an attendee. Just then, Zoom dropped out for everybody, and on my side, Zoom restarted. On restart, there was no host or co-hosts. Also, I had a claim host button.
Rupert.
So I just wanted to define some of the terminology here. I just wonder what was happening, because you cannot pass co-hosts. You can only, if you're a host, you can pass host to somebody else. But if you're a co-host, you cannot pass co-host. So it may just be worth checking what exactly happened there. Again, just to clarify the terminology, attendee would be an attendee in a webinar. For a meeting, it's a participant. And if it dropped out, then I'm assuming that the last host or co-host to leave the meeting may have clicked on end meeting rather than leave. The button can look similar sometimes, or you can be in the habit of clicking leave and then suddenly you're actually clicking end instead. And claim host is a feature where if you're joining a meeting that is in progress, but for some reason has no host, if you are the true host, the organizer of the meeting, you have the option to have a host key, which is like a string that you can use from another computer or from a Zoom room to literally claim host. So that's the definition of some of those things, but what exactly happened in that scenario, I'm not quite sure.
And before we go on, Mark, are you okay? You had your hand raised.
I have host now.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right. Alex?
Yeah, I don't know what it is with Zoom or what happened with Zoom. I can tell you from my experience with Hangouts in years past, it's when all the feeds coming into the reflector got out of sync. They would need to reset, so it would not kick everybody out and bring them all back in, and so I think that there's a possibility that that may be what happens every once in a while, is things get out of sync and it can't keep them in sync, and it has to drop everybody out, bring them back in. But it looked like it went out for a couple minutes. It sounded like this morning. I think this was right at 5 a.m. or 8 a.m. It was interesting that it happened. Anytime something happens at the top of the hour, I often think that there is a script running somewhere. Like if it happens right at the very top of the hour, I often go, no, somebody ran some update somewhere. Anyway, because that's usually, it rarely happens otherwise. Anyway.
David?
Just to Rupert's point with that host key, I'm assuming that's something that could be passed along to like the emergency backup crew or something. And is that something that's you can regenerate it? Or
Mickey has it. Long ago, I gave it to Mickey, so Mickey's able to jump in there with the key. We might, but I've been careful not to redistribute it just because it can be complicated if people
absolutely.
accidentally open it.
Yeah, a host key applies to ones as a host. So if I gave somebody my host key, they'd be able to start any of my meetings.
Hasmukh?
Yeah, what actually happened is Rotem was the host, and there was only one co-host, and he was appointing another co-host. It's at that point that Zoom dropped out and came back up again. And then we noticed that of all the folks in the meeting, nobody was host or co-host. And that is when we sent a red flare to Mickey, and Mickey basically claimed host.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Hasmukh, what made you switch from mimoLive to OBS?
Hasmukh?
Yeah, I used mimoLive, and when the Zoom has screen share, it flows over my meter, so the screen scrape doesn't really work there. It also occupies quite a bit of screen real estate, and that's why we switched to OBS, so that the actual Zoom meter doesn't have to be on the screen. It can be just pushed down on the side, and that's why we switched.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. What is the most effective way to evaluate a mic with one's voice?
Mitch? You're muted.
I love the switch. In my case, it's very easy to listen to myself and evaluate while wearing a pair of cans, because I've been doing that for 40 years, but it may not be the same for you. If you're unused to hearing your voice back to yourself, you're going to have to record a snippet and then evaluate it, playing it back on some type of an audio system that you're used to. But it's important that it's something that you're used to hearing so that you can evaluate it accordingly.
Leo?
Yeah, so the biggest issue I have with this is getting people who have never heard their own voice, as Mitchell said, to hear what they sound like. And it's actually hearing what they sound like on the mics that they're using. So typically I'll do it, if I'm doing it and the platform that they're using is Zoom, I will sit there and ask them to say something and then swap between microphones. So if I now swap between this microphone, apologize everybody, I'm going to go straight onto my MacBook Pro microphone, and that's straight onto my MacBook Pro microphone. I'm going to swap back quickly. And I will actually record that, and including what's also important is to include recording of dead space so they can hear the difference of why there's a noise floor. But I always do that recording and get them to flip between so they can hear it. One of the things with noise, and your short-term memory is really, really short on voice, on audio. And if you're not hearing it very close together, you can't remember enough of what it sounded like to match it up.
David?
In the before times, some retailers in my area have audition booths, so you can go in and try a whole fleet of microphones. And if you're lucky enough to have a little portable recorder, you could ask to patch into it, record yourself on all these mics, and do the whole mic chain piece that we do here.
Jeffrey?
There's a lot of free programs out there. I'd like to get in something visual that shows me all the frequencies and what's spiking and what's varying for me. But when it comes to, and that just is straight up for a microphone. If you're talking about using a microphone going into something like Zoom, what I like to do is I like to get a program that actually puts a small delay on my voice, so I'll talk and then it'll pause for about a second or two, go into the program, come back to me so I can hear it from there and actually analyze it from there as well, because different programs can do different things. We saw this earlier in the beginning, where for some reason my voice sounded like a Cylon. I just had to restart some software and it fixed the problem.
Alex?
I've been known to order a group of mics and then send back the ones that didn't work. So it's part of the I haven't done it with Guy because I know, but I haven't. Yeah, but I will order. It's like ordering shoes on Zappos for me. The main thing is that I try to get my environment all set up exactly the way I want it, and I try to do them all at the same time of day. Like I want to do them one after the other. That's get back to what David was talking about, was that the having an environment, this is what it sounds like in this environment, because the whole nature of the mic, if you do it days apart, your voice will be different, the space will be different, everything. And so you want to try to test as many mics as you can. If you're trying to figure out what mic you need for yourself, you want to test as many as you can. I have a dream someday of getting a bunch of different voices together into a booth and just spend a whole day or a whole week just recording, so that we can just say, this is what, if you have this this type of voice, these are how these different mics react to it. But someday we'll do that.
Guy?
Yeah, I'd say come into after hours and get George to come in, somebody with a trained ear, or Mickey, that can help you with the nuances, because there's all these terminologies. Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it too close with proximity effect? Is it popping? There's things that you won't know as a beginner, whereas somebody with 20 years will be able to tell you pretty quick, this is hiss, this is noise. It could be coming from your preamp. So it's actually follow the whole chain. It's not just the mic. So some people can get really great results just with an SM58. In fact, when Sound Devices, John DeTulis came in, he's just using an SM58, but he's got a killer preamp with the mix pre. So it's the whole chain. It's not just the mic.
Yes. All right. Next question.
Next question is from Guy Cochran in Seattle. What was discovered in yesterday's Zoom test kitchen?
Leo?
A huge amount. First of all, we found out that Zoom test kitchen can run without Jeff, because Jeff was half an hour late. We ran through, we found out that the background, when you can put the overlays, which is disabled in this account, but you can put it in there. You can add them all in at the administrator level. But what we also found out is that any individual can add them in themselves for their own login. So it means that people can put a lower third or a bug onto their own Zoom account, and it will appear in meetings that they are not a member of, and it seems to load it up and put it into the reflector. So it's done at the cloud level. That was really useful. We also found that all the spotlighting and everything that we would hope, some of it shows through to the YouTube side. But even if one of the things that definitely does not work, and we thought it did, but it didn't, is when you spotlight, as soon as you screen share, the active speaker takes over, even if they're not spotlighted. So in the meeting, you're seeing the spotlighted people. On the YouTube, it's the active speaker.
David?
We also messed around with the focus mode, which was an interesting view into a meeting, where focus mode will spotlight host and co-host and then have a window of yourself, and that's only your view. But what happened again to the stream out to CDN was anybody who was frozen, or there was some weird behavior like that where all the other gallery participants were frozen except for those that were in that focus mode. It was really strange. And then when they snapped back, everybody just kind of.
Leo?
I mean, to add, the great thing about the Zoom test kitchen is literally we are sitting there coming up with, let's try something with a load of people who are willing to try something and see how many times we can break various different elements of Zoom. What happens when we go over 9 people on, and we were flipping hosts from one person to another to see what actually happened on the stream. Did it switch? Didn't it switch? I think, as David said, the focus mode was the funniest, because literally 9 or 10 people are frozen in time with the others still moving. And then when you turn it off, all of a sudden they all start coming back to life. It was literally like watching like somebody had pressed pause on all of these people bar 4 on the screen. So they're all moving. The rest of us are like, so it's quite funny, and it's unusable in the production.
That was a scene in the Wu-Tang show that's on Hulu. Like he was mixing music and everybody would freeze and they'd be like, "Don't leave me here." Anyway, Reanimator. Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Hasmukh Gajar in Cape Town. Isidora Lab. I missed this session if it took place. At a high level, what was covered and what did the attendees learn?
Alex.
So far, it's really casual. Like it's literally Tlaloc and Andy are there. We're playing around with it and asking questions and figuring out like how this works. I had a very specific need, which is I'm trying to build this kind of live view of being able to use color charts to match cameras to each other visually. And so I was figuring out how to do that. And Andy, of course, wrote a node that would do parts of it. Showed us how you could go find open source shaders that we could use. And we just started kind of figuring out how the flow works, just basic, like how to look at a live video and how to deal with a playback and, how to do some scaling. And so we're just kind of messing around with it. Next week, Wednesday, at noon, we're going to do a 90 minutes where we just kind of, again, we're going to kind of do some Zoom OSC type things where we just kind of play with the meeting that we're in and let everyone kind of noodle with that to understand how to work with external actors. So that's what's happened so far. Again, it's not some. I mean, we will eventually start recording something like for this, but right now it's really. I don't know if you'd want to watch it. It's just us messing around. We have learned that Douglas Carmichael is way ahead of us. His questions are way more complicated than the rest of us. The rest of us are like, we have no idea what he's talking about. So but Tlaloc and Andy do. So they respond to some of those, and so we're all going to try to catch up with Douglas. Anyway, so but it's a really interesting. It's a really powerful package, and we'll get more serious about it over time, but right now, just a bunch of us messing about in the program.
Next question.
Next question is from Tim Mann. He said, recommendations for a network cable tester that can show cable length to fault, and a check pinout for AB standards.
John.
Good question, Tim. So there's two classes. This is important. There's two classes of testers. There's the TDRs, time domain reflectometers, which is this guy. We invented these and sold this company to Fluke many, many moons ago. And this does more than just test the pairing, which those testers are cheap. This will actually certify the cable, but also will tell you the fault at a certain length, whether it's shunted or open. And they're expensive, but they're worth the money. They're good. The other testers are cheap, but they won't give you the distance of the length of the cable.
Leo.
So at the other extreme, but they do give you a distance, sort of. I've had this one for a really long time, which is the SC8108. It does give you the length. It's approximate. But it comes, what it does is it comes with another end. You plug the other end, so you find the cable and it beeps, beep. So you can see that. The other one that I bought recently is this one, which is the NF8209. Again, this has, the nice thing about this is that the worlds are moving on, and this also tests PoE. So this will do a PoE test as well as it will do a length test. It's bit weird that it ends up with multiple connections at this end, so you end up with 4 different connections, again with the remote end on there. Neither of these are super expensive. None of them are the level that John was talking about. They are a level that work for if you need to do cables and you need to ratify. And of course, as you know, with all Cat 6 and all Cat cables, they all have lengths written on there now. So, so you know how long you always look on the side of the cable. It'll tell you how far you are.
Rupert.
That'll tell you how far you are unless the cable's been cut somewhere. But plus one on the Fluke equipment. I've had one a lot. I think it's a slightly more simple version than the one John showed, but it's a TDR also. It gives you cable length there overall. Shows you each of the 8 conductors and which one is broken, if there is a broken one. Again, if you put the gizmo on the other end of the cable, it'll tell you all your wiring standards. It's a tone generator also. So if you have a tone probe, you can pick that up. It also does coax, but very useful. These are about $300-400. But when it comes to test equipment and measurement, Fluke. I mean, I have an electrical engineering background, so I'm pretty adamant on Fluke stuff.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Tim Mann as well. Is there a way of getting more than one screen output on an M1 Mac Air? Currently, I have the built-in screen plus one external.
Alex.
I think that Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you could use a pluggable to get out of that screen, and then you would be able to get the two screens out, but you would need to have a Zoom room. So you'd have a Zoom room would give you the third screen. I don't think you can do it if you're just a participant, but I'm not certain about that.
What you can do is use Zoom ISO.
Yes.
With Zoom ISO, you could get two clean outputs. And by the way, Alex, the only reason there's been a few things I wanted to raise my hand, but I realized that I'm accidentally logged on as John Preto's panelist view. So on that first question, there was two Pretos, and one of them was going to be me. So
it's very confusing. Yeah,
I have learned that being on office hours on something other than your computer is very difficult. So we're kind of here at, it's weird. Sorry.
That's good. Yeah. So Zoom ISO would definitely do the job as well. If you wanted to do it, and you'd have a lot of other things you could do, and they'd all be clean outputs.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Jonas Detal from Stuttgart. He said, what is the best low latency output out of AWS miniLive to monitor it?
Anybody? I
don't know if there is a good, I don't know if there is best. I'm trying to think of it. This is a point of discussion. That's all I can say is that it's a point. It's folks at AWS know that this is painful. So there's no great way to do it that we know of. We've kind of been able to do HLS outputs, but it's not the actual output because it's it's not the RTMP, but you can do an HLS that you can just go see. It's being delivered there, but I don't know if anyone has a better idea. It has been a point of contention.
Guy?
I'll give it a shot. I mean, I guess you could just go SRT to a local instance up in the cloud and then use something like Parsec or something low latency to view that. And so you would have, maybe you get sub-second, but that's probably the best.
Yeah. And the hard part is just you're not really seeing what's going out. It doesn't give you that feedback that you would. It's not like you're in the feed. You're creating another feed from it.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, so you're going to get that second still, but your SRT is probably the fastest way to move unless you can use that CDI transport. I haven't done that yet, but CDI is another way that's like NDI up in the cloud. And so we'll have to test.
David?
Just wondering, would RTSP be lower latency than real time? No? Okay, I sit corrected. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Hasmukh Gajar in Cape Town. He says, follow up on yesterday's question. Successfully connected DPA 4066 to the 6K camera. Did a test record for the on-camera meters. What number should I aim for in the camera in the channel gain? Should it be -20 or minimize yellow bars in the meter?
Noah.
I would typically aim for your peaks to hit like around -12. If you go too high, obviously you have a chance of clipping, especially if you get excited. And if you go too low, obviously you can't hear it as well. But when you boost it, you're bringing a lot more of that noise floor up. So -20 might be just a little bit lower than what I would typically do for a recording. And then obviously if you're live streaming, -12 is probably still too low. So there's usually in software or something else, you might want to boost that as well or add compression.
Guy?
Yeah, what Noah said, I know he's got a mix pre, and so if you want the best sound to avoid that clipping, really, he's got the mix pre, so the limiters built in there, as long as you turn them on, can help you drive a little bit hotter audio, but then have that safety net in there. So, and then you get the cleaner preamps than just going straight into the camera. So there's a number of reasons to use a mixer going into the camera rather than just plugging a lav mic directly in.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Mark Baker in Truro, UK. Is there a recommendation of lighting visualization software that would work for inside buildings with lots of ambient light, like libraries or churches?
Ooh. Alex?
what you're looking for is physical-based lighting, or physical-based rendering, and so it is. Cinema 4D can be used for something like that. Now, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about lighting. You're trying to reproduce something for an architectural lighting, not necessarily live lighting. I do believe that SolidWorks has some of these features in there, and then there's also some discussion of the next version of Unreal Engine may have pieces that you might need that might be useful for you. But the big thing is that what you're looking for is the indirect lighting. What you're calling ambient lighting is indirect lighting. And traditionally, we've used things like global illumination models that basically, when the lighting hits a surface, the surface absorbs some of that lighting, but it also reflects some of that lighting. And then you have to let it bounce from surface to surface, kind of like a heat, as opposed to a direct mirror or specular highlight. And so it's a longer render. So the short story is to do that really well can take a lot per frame to do. It might be minutes or hours sometimes to calculate those indirect lighting surfaces. And so that's things to think about. What you're looking for though is global illumination models or physical based rendering. And the place that I've done it, and I don't know if it's as accurate, is Cinema 4D.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Leo Mindel. I'm sorry, no, it's not from Leo. It's from Jonas Dottel in Stuttgart. Leo Mindel, what makes you think the overlays are added at the reflector?
Leo.
So when you say something and somebody like Jonas is going to pick you up on it. What I think is that the overlays are added on the cloud side of Zoom. Why? Because when we swap to a different PC, they're still there, they exist in there, rather than being added locally on the client. That's what I meant. Very similar to how when you've got an image, an icon for you, that seems to be held there. So it's not held on your local machine, it's held somewhere up on there, and it's applied at that end, so that you're not having, it's not being, so the reason we're mentioning this is it's not rendering it locally on your on your machine as you would do if you added it into something like OBS.
Rupert?
Leo may be right, maybe they've made some update, but the way I thought it worked was you can upload the file into your online profile, but the rendering I thought was still done locally, or at least it used to be, because Zoom are very specific about the system requirements you must have in order for that to work. Maybe it's changed now.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Elliot Robinson in Las Vegas. He said, what do you use to troubleshoot intermittent ISP issues? Would continuous ping with timestamp work? I am thinking of trying hrping.
Rupert?
Ping can help. It can be a tool in the toolbox. Doesn't give you a complete picture necessarily, but a timestamp is definitely helpful if you go that route, because if you leave it running for hours or even days, if you go back and look for a problem, you need to know when it happened. I like to use beyond ping. You can use a more enhanced tool. I have used smoke ping in the past. That can give you a wider view of actual throughput and actual performance. But if you are really convinced it's your ISP and you're going to take that on with them, just make sure you've eliminated everything at your end that it could possibly be. If you're with an ISP that allows you to use your own equipment rather than their supplied router, try and use your own equipment. That'll give you access to more fault diagnosis on your own equipment rather than ISP supplied equipment.
Alex?
Yeah, one of the things that we do when we're trying to figure this out when we're moving into a location, or if we're testing a location, is to run a stream. So we'll get a computer that's going to run. It doesn't have to be anything. And we run it through a router that can actually measure throughput. So in our case, we use Meraki's, and we have a little graph that just shows our bandwidth, and we'll just run a pretty heavy stream through it and leave it there for days, or hours at least. And then we're watching to see drops, somewhere, something that's unusual. But you can do a lot of different things that just do something that's very constant over a long period of time that sometimes is very stressful. The other thing that we've been known to do is upload a very large file. So, like 300 gig file, from a location, and just let it sit and watch the router and just see what it does, because it'll saturate the line as well. which
Leo.
cannot make, by the way, will not make friends if someone else is using the line for anything else. So don't do it if that's your line. Don't do it if it's the building line.
Leo.
Is a very old application that was under Unix, MTR, and there is a Windows versions of it. And what MTR does is it's like ping, but it's on steroids. It gives you every single hop, and it will do it over a period of time. So you can run this for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2 days, and it will show you every single packet on their way in and out, how they worked, what was the average, worst, last, etc., etc. So you can run this. This is like soak testing on ping. Very, very useful.
Jeffrey.
Sometimes I'll actually take my router out of the situation and ping directly from the cable modem into the system. And what I will do is I will set tests up going to different locations, and East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, and run all of those. Something like a lot of the programs that were mentioned here. Ping Plotter is another one that does a lot of more than just pinging, but doing the trace routing and things like that. Because you never know. Sometimes you're not going in the location that you're expecting to go for a lot of things. So being able to remove all of your network out of it, and then doing the test straight from the cable modem. Make sure that you've rebooted that cable modem before you start any tests. That way you're at your optimal settings for the cable modem.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Chris Widner in Lafayette, Indiana. What exactly was the lower third setup in Zoom that Leo mentioned?
Guy.
So in the backend, I put a link in the chat. So if you have a paid account, this is not going to work on a free account. So you go into the web portal, the zoom.us web portal, and then you follow those instructions. You can add a, let's say, lower third. And then in the end user's client, they can go in and add that as a video filter. We can't do it in this meeting, as Leo said, because it's been disabled. But if we had set up a logo that we wanted everybody to use, like our company has. When this first came out, Jonas is on my account, and he put a DVE logo up there just to test, and everybody in the company can now add that logo at any time, which can give you that sense of uniformity. And then you don't have to use a virtual background, because remember, this is in front, so it's not behind. It's not a virtual background. In the back, it's a foreground element. So it works by uploading that to the cloud, and then I believe it pulls it down locally onto your machine, and then the rendering's done there at the local level.
That's really cool. Leo?
Yeah, so this is actually the bit that Guy is talking about. So as you can see that you've got an option here called video filters. It's interesting to get this to work. It's actually further into the account than you think it is. You've got to go quite deep in to find this. But video filters, when you can add a custom filter. But the thing that we found out yesterday on the Zoom Kitchen is that you can, even on a free account, add it to you personally, so that if this feature is turned on, you could add your own one to a meeting for yourself, but you can't add to everybody else. But as Guy said, the key bit is, if you can imagine you've got 10 people who are representing the company in a meeting, and you want all those 10 people to have those logos on, you can actually do this really easy, really effectively, and much cheaper than having to sit there and try and put OBS out to all those people.
So I'm sorry, I want clarification real quick. Does that work on if your company does it and wants everyone to use it, each person has to go in and turn it on? Okay.
Once every person once it's enabled at the account at the top level, everybody can go in. If you look at it in the moment in here, if you click on the caret by the video and say video settings and go down to background and filters, you'll see the virtual backgrounds are there, but the video filters are turned off. When the video filters are turned on, you would see all the ones in there that are enabled by the account, and also the ones that you've put in personally, if you put in ones personally. Well, I've never done the personal ones, I've done the account ones.
Oh, that's cool. Alex?
Is it a full screen key or just lower third, or can it do anything? It's just any...
Full screen key. full screen, over. It's the examples they give you is a Pride banner all the way around the outside, a Pride frame, and a number of others. It's like one of the people on Zoom Kitchen last night just was like, boom, that was like all of my work that I've spent hours and hours. You've just solved all of the problems that I take too long to do, because all I want is my customer's logo to appear here.
But I was also thinking it'd be interesting to be able to design custom mortises, so you can have, actual edges that go all the way around that all fit together, so that, I mean, not fit together like but it would look like you could change the whole look of this if you built it so that it fades to black on the, the mortises like are a little like have some 3D to them, but they all fade down to black. It might look like they're all like sticking out of the screen, and cut in there. We'll have to play with it. I did turn it off because I was like, oh, there's just going to be a lot of debris on everybody's, I just was like, there's going to be just a ton of debris on everybody's window. I don't think I would leave it on, but I may turn it on next week so that we can play with it a little bit, so we can see how much debris ends up on everybody's screens. But to play with the mortises would be fun. The mortises would be fun.
The negative is you end up also turning on the ones which enable people to put hats on their heads and all of that sort of stuff.
All that shenanigans.
David?
I'm just, to Alex's point, I think at the tenant level, though, you can force a look out to people, at least as far as the virtual backgrounds. I'm not sure about the mortise, but there was somebody who had the show lights, even though they weren't animated around their little picture frame last.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Tim Mann. He said, recommend audio and video kit to improve quality of meetings. Current setup is Mac webcam and AirPods.
Noah.
So if you go on Discord, I know Roscoe has posted kits before and like lists of specific items for different levels of budget. But just based off of what you're talking about, the first recommendation I would have is actually free. If you have AirPods and you're listening and they're being used as the microphone, you're trying to do two tasks over Bluetooth, and that doesn't often work well. So I would try to separate those two tasks by listening on the AirPods and then using the internal mic in that MacBook Pro, which isn't ideal. The next step would be to add a microphone, right? A Blue Yeti, Elgato Wave 3, or some sort of external USB microphone, and get that as close as you can to the source. Moving down the line, then you have lighting, or separating your subject right from the background, making sure your subject has more light than the background. And then as you move through, webcam would be next after that.
Rupert?
Yeah, and the Brio, I guess, would be a good webcam addition. Just when it comes to AirPods, I mean, Tim's probably asking for himself in his current situation. I just want to add a little anecdote that I picked up this week. I was guiding somebody through, and they said they were using AirPods in Zoom, which was true. But the fact was they were using the AirPods paired to their phone, and they were using their phone via a phone call to dial into Zoom separately over telephone audio. And and the call was going over Wi-Fi calling. And so I just
what you were saying is that the audio is outstanding.
It's just who would think that somebody, anyway.
It caught fire and burned down. Sorry, Michael.
Yes, hello. I would take a look at the Apogee Digital, apogeedigital.com, and they have a mic that is really, really excellent. 24-bit, 196K, excellent microphone. And then just like Noah said, go for the lighting, and you can get cheap LED lights on Amazon and get yourself a daylight LED pack and try to light up at the face. And if you can, do background lights, and definitely go with headphones or some kind of earpieces. You can still use those AirPods for talking. They would be fine.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and think this is Fenwick.
Yeah, I was going to say the easiest way to improve your image quality is just go to Preto's house. He's got spare setups, and it's much easier than buying all this stuff. The birds are a pain, but the birds aren't quite as bad as the chirp.
Shade. That is the nicest form of shade I've seen so far. Noah.
So good. So good. No, I forgot to mention hardline internet is a must.
Absolutely. And we could all go back to Jeffrey's video. Next question.
Next
no.
question is from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. Says Zoom Rooms apparently supports a multiple gallery view showing up to 147 participants across 3 screens. Has anyone seen this in the wild, and wouldn't it be great for hybrid events?
No takers? Alex.
I actually have, and it works great. So it's basically three monitors with 49. You know, you can basically set your Zoom room to all the monitors are outputting it. And we've used it in a couple different places, and it works really, really well, especially for a smaller event. You can also use jump to different screens on different. You can have a couple rooms join and then spread it out even further. So you can put a lot of people into it. Now, you may want to end up using Zoom ISO for some of your key things, or when people are talking or so on and so forth, to grab onto those things. But as a background, it works well. And, it's a hybrid event, but also when you think about digital first events, so we kind of, I define digital first events as no audience, no physical audience in the room. What you can do there is take all of those and put them out on screens, projection screens or LED walls or whatever, where the hosts can see them all there. So even outside of a hybrid event, they're really powerful as a way to give the host that feedback that they're looking for, so they really feel like they can see people and interact with them.
John or Chris? Fenwick.
It's me. I was going to say, Alex, being here with John, right over there, I'm realizing it's coming to reality how distracting it is when there's other people.
Just one.
Like, I want to turn like this, and I realize that
just one. All it takes is one. It's different.
It really only takes one other person in the room, somebody wandering in the background, and a bird, and everything falls apart. It's awful.
Yeah.
All right. Next question.
Next question is from Laura Thompson in Texas. There is a 3-day accessibility conference starting Tuesday. Is there any specific that this group wants to know? I will ask educators separately.
Oh, then I'm going to save mine for the education hour. Anyone else want to know anything?
I'll be interested to see if there's any movement on captions. Just how captions are being processed. Like it's hell right now. Like it's just, for those of us trying to make things more accessible via captioning, the entire platform of how this is managed online is a disaster. And so I'd love to see if anyone has any inklings of new ways that they're planning to do this, because it's not working. I mean, it can be done, but the reason it doesn't happen is because the infrastructure is so fragile.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Next question is from Roberto Barro from Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. I am really new to OBS and want to add lower thirds to our live stream at church. How is this done?
Jeffrey.
Sorry, I thought somebody was in front of me. I'm trying to set this up really quick. So OBS, first of all, the biggest thing is whatever computer you decide to do this on, make sure that the computer has the resource to do it. Because you start getting into things like lower thirds, all of a sudden your computer's not going to be performing the way that you want it to, and you run into other things. Lower thirds are a little bit tougher to do on OBS because there's nothing really native. I mean, you can kind of put text on and overlay it. What I was trying to do was I was trying to set up my SPXGC, which was a free program. We talked about it earlier this week, and there's a video on it that you can get graphic overlays on there. And the best part about that is you don't need to keep it on the same computer. You can put it on a different computer, Windows, Mac, Linux, and then port it over to your OBS to overlay from there. And that's going to give you better graphics. There's other options as well using After Effects and special plugins. OBS has a lot of plugins in their GitHub and things like that. And you just have to find the right one.
John or Fenwick?
Sorry. So Roberto, the other thing to keep in mind is, although what Jeffrey just talked about is very cool, if you're very new to OBS, you may not want to start taking on another application as well. what you could do is, what you're going to need to do is actually make something that is a transparent image. You could do that in Photoshop. You can even do it in Keynote, drop in on after hours sometime. I'd gladly walk you through how to do that. And then the easy way in OBS is you have to create a scene. They call it a scene, which is this graphic with this lower third on top of it. Then you have to import what they call, excuse me, a source. And if you pin the other John Preto's screen, he's showing it apparently. But you make a source, and that source becomes, you have to assign an image to that source to be what's called an image, and then you pick that PNG to be the thing that keys. And again, if you ever want to drop in on after hours, if I'm there, I'll gladly walk you through how to do it.
Leo.
So I'm halfway through doing this to try and show you where we are. So as mentioned, this is live on a machine on OBS. So what I've done is I've added in a text line, which is what you do. You add a new text in there. But then the key that everybody is trying to work out is how do you make that move. You go onto there. You go into filters. And it's the filters, and you add in an effect filter, and that's where you get the scrolling and the other things that you want to do. So it's adding the filters, that the bit that everybody's trying to do. However, I would say, my view is that if you're going to be starting to do this and you're going to get really key and heavy on this, I'd start looking at vMix before you spend a lot of time on OBS and then want to change later.
Guy.
Yeah, I would say to add in OBS, add a web browser input, and then jump into, of all places, Facebook. If you hit go live, you then have this cool thing that is add graphics to your live video. And in there, you'll see a web browser input URL that you can grab. And once you create your lower third, you could then hit publish, and watch when I hit publish, what happens to this. This is the output right here in this other screen. Watch to the right there. As I push that, my lower third's going to appear. So this can be pushed into vMix. This is just HTML5 getting pushed out, but this is free built in. So two steps: OBS, add browser input, add your footage behind your camera, and then simple graphics package right inside of Facebook that can be pushed out to anything. So you're going OBS out to YouTube, OBS out to Vimeo, whatever, but you're handling your graphics from Facebook for free. So this is kind of like what we saw the other day with SG, whatever the rest of it is, PX. I always forget that name. This is just like it for free.
Noah?
Sorry to jump in last second here. So we use ProPresenter, and they can generate lower thirds for external screens. You could also stream out of ProPresenter, which we don't do. So just another option for lower thirds.
5 people, 5 different ways to do it. That's pretty impressive.
All right. Jeffrey.
There's one other thing, and that is if you're doing it for a church, there's a lot of church software out there that will help you get lower thirds into OBS, and a few different programs. I won't go into all of them, but because I can't remember the names, but you can check those out.
ProPresenter is probably the leader in that from our experience.
All right, next question.
Next question is from James Brook in New York. What is the best way to get iPhone running NDIhx app into an ATEM? Thanks.
David.
The best way I found so far is Magewell Pro Convert NDI to HDMI. That's the view of a camera that's just off to my left. And then in and of itself, it presents all the available NDI streams. You can hook a keyboard into the device and have that as a NDI sub switcher if you really wanted to. It's pretty slick. About $400.
Okay, Mitch.
I don't know if this is the best way, but it certainly is a quick way. If you happen to have a Apple TV sitting around, you can plug it into your ATEM, and you can purchase the Sienna NDI monitor, and now you've got a way of getting NDI into your system. Just a quick way, not the best way.
Guy.
Mitch got my answer. That was it. Perfect.
All right. Next question.
Next question is from Leo Mindel in Pinner, UK. Amazon is selling the Brio for £112, is this a legit price? And Leo takes the cake for today. He throws the ball and catches it.
Leo.
So some of us will remember the Stream Deck fiasco, and we're still fighting the money to get the money back. But this came up today in after hours at £112. As far as I can see, the Brio is selling at £112 legitimately in the UK at the moment.
It's funny, when I saw that link as a note, it was linked, the sold by was socks, SOCKZ is what it looks like on my side. So on your side, it looks like Amazon EU. On my side of the same link, it says socks. So I would be careful. I don't know exactly how that would even be possible to have it.
Okay. But, so, I mean, if I then go and visit the Logitech store, I'm pretty sure it's like, because I then go.
No, but you can visit the Logitech store, but this is what got us with the Stream Deck. Well, didn't get us.
But it's listed on the Logitech. Yeah, I agree. But when it's listed on the Logitech store homepage, £112.
Oh, it is. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. There you go. They've dropped it. They've gotten very aggressive.
Jeffrey?
So, okay, here's what you want to do. And of course, I got the page up here. First of all, yeah, you have this, or the sold by socks. So the first thing I would do is I would go and I'd take a look at the seller information. This one's got some high-end results. They can't fake this. Anybody tries to fake this, they're pretty much gone. We found that out over the summer.
Total ratings.
Second.
Eight total.
Yeah, it is 8 total ratings, but
so
it's still
that's a huge red flag.
The other thing that I would do is go down further on the page. It says other sellers on Amazon. Now, if this price, which right now I see $169.99, it's matching some of these other prices by about £10. So it's still a game. You still have to trust the seller, but the bottom line is it's pretty close to what the American price is, and so I would be pretty trustworthy. Plus, I use my American Express to order from, so if Amazon does not honor the refund, I still have a route to go through to get a refund on my purchase.
Noah.
Leo pulled a Cochrane copyright Office Hours 2020.
Alex.
Yeah, I am seeing that across the board, Amazon is dropping the price, or Logitech, or someone's dropping the price. It's about $170 US, $172, $175. I have a feeling that's because the Elgato and the Dell are coming in at $199. I think that they probably marked Logitech. Logitech probably has a lot more margin because they've been selling the same camera for so long. And they just kind of went, we're going to go down. So it's still, I have both of the Elgato and the Dell webcams here, and I can tell you that the Brio is still superior to both of them as far as for that price. Yeah.
All right. And then next question.
Next question is from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California. He said, could we have an X-rite i1 display or similar workshop?
Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. We just have to put it in the second hour, and we'll start trying to figure out who we have to get. I actually know some folks there, so I might be able to find someone that can come talk to us about it. So just put it in the second hour so I can remember it.
Excellent. All right. So we made it through the first hour of questions, and now we're going to move on to education. So invite our educators in, which may be a little light today because it's a holiday weekend for those teachers and they like to take advantage.
And I want to apologize, Laura, and maybe one other person. I might have kicked back an education question back to you into your notes. As I cleared this thing, I hit the buttons a little too fast. So anyway, take note of that. And then, and so for Mark, we just need to go ahead and let our educators in. I don't know if we have any raising their hands. A couple of them. Yeah, there we go. Jeffrey, can you manage the mic checks?